What is up? Welcome on into Pickswise Playbook Week 8 edition, sponsored by Superbook Sports. I'm Lauren Jabara, joined alongside my two favorite people in the entire world. We got Jared Smith,
Aw.
Tank Williams. Jared, 7 weeks in, some crazy things have happened. It's hard to read some of these teams. After 7 weeks, we're a little over the third of the way through the season. How are you feeling about the National Football League in general right now?
I mean, based on my picks, I'm clearly not that well. Rough week for me last week. I think in general, it's fair to say that there's been a lot of volatility. Unders continue to be a free win most weeks. Divisional unders, especially, I saw unders in general are hitting at a pretty high rate, over 60%. But unders involving games that are familiar with teams that are familiar with each other, divisional unders over 70%. So scoring is down, quality of play is down. But again, I would expect those things to maybe pick up as we get into the meat of the season and these teams, gear up for a postseason run.
Yeah, Tank, for you being a former player, teams are now a third of the way through the season, a little over a third of the way through the season. At this point, like the Giants and the Jets are way better than they thought they would be. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Packers are way worse than we thought they would be. Is this the real identity of some of these teams, or is kind of the middle of the season when the real identity comes out?
I think we're starting to see the real identity of some of these teams, but I'm glad you mentioned one, and that's the Giants, because I'm not sure you guys probably already talked about the little swag bet that you had, but I remember the
We
passion
did.
and the conviction that you talked about the Giants with leading up into this weekend, that weekend match. And then to see the way that they won that game against all odds. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, stopping Christian Kirk on the 1 yard line. So now I'm convinced that whatever team LJ is rolling with, I am also on board from now on out. And I also believe that whatever voodoo that Giselle
Yeah.
Bundchen has on Tom Brady right now, you also have that over Jared. And so, Jared, I don't know what you're doing in your life, but you may need to go ahead and resolve that ASAP because my
I
girl
agree.
AJ is sprinkling that pixie dust all over your head, bro.
Tank, listen, it's been now over a year. This isn't a new, like, it's not like this
Oh,
just started this
it's
season.
real.
It has
Yeah.
been, and I swore off on Monday. I'll be honest. I was not in my best state of mind on Monday. And that's just what happens after you get this. Listen, and the NFL especially, it will beat you down. Tank, this is a player. It will beat you down.
Yeah.
As a gambler, it will beat you down. You will be served up humble pie every week once you think you're ahead of the market, ahead of your ski. So just take it week by week. I had a great Tuesday. Did some retail therapy, bought a couple of new jackets, new pair of Jordans. I had to clear my head, but I went to the hot tub. Like, you just have to get back in that right
Yeah.
state of mind because
I
Jared,
just
it
want you
ain't
to
easy
know
week
that
to week.
I just want you to know that LJ is on the road, but that voodoo doll travels. So hey, just make sure
You
you keep
do.
your
I
wits
know.
about yourself.
it's
It's
not
been a year of it,
stagnant, it's
LJ. Take
moving.
your victory
And
lap. You deserve
honestly,
it. You
Tank,
absolutely deserve
yeah,
it.
Tank and Jared, honestly, the Giants defense, that last play of the game looked like Tank did probably as a first team All American back in 2001. I snuck it in somehow, but there was a creative way to do it.
You know what
But
they reminded me
no,
of? They reminded me of the Titans Rams
Oh,
Super Bowl when what was it? Kevin
yeah,
Dyson got
yeah.
stopped at the
Hmm.
1 yard line. I mean, it wasn't obviously as big of a game as that, but the
Right,
way
but it
that
was
it
that
went
close.
down, it was. And the irony is, obviously, I had the Jags for the spread. Didn't matter for that,
mhm,
but I also put a significant more amount on the Jags money line, which also
all right.
hurt very much to be 1 yard away. It was, listen, Sunday was rough. Monday was rougher because we had the Pats and a teaser,
Yeah.
but we refresh and we charge, and now we get ready for week 8.
We put a bow on week 7, and now we move on to week 8. But some season betting stats for the NFL now through 7 weeks. Like the unders, like Jared was saying, 56 and 36. They're hitting at about a 61% rate this season, which is a lot because if you're betting the unders, you're not really having the under sweats. You're winning a majority of your bets there. Best against the spread teams. The Falcons are 6-1. They finally lost a game against the spread in week 7. The Giants 6-1 against the spread, and the Bills 4-1 against the spread. 10 teams now have winning records against overs, but 13 teams only have 2 losses or less for unders. So that's pretty crazy when you think about it. Let's talk about week 7 biggest surprises though, Tank. I'm going to come to you first on this one because some of these teams are really surprising me up to this point. The Packers not so much, but the Bucs for me, and I don't know if you agree, I just keep waiting for them to get something going, anything going. That was a huge surprise that they weren't able to score a touchdown against the lowly Panthers right now.
See, that's how I know we on the same page right now. The first line on my page is, yo, Tampa Bay bucking up. And that's for real. Like, I really don't understand what's going on with the Bucks. Like, whether you're talking about the final outcome of the game that Carolina was actually able to pull off the upset at home, whether we're talking about Mike Evans dropping a bomb on the first drive of the game, that probably changes the whole complexion of the game if they connect on that deep ball and he runs in for a touchdown. Whether we're talking about the controversy at the end of the game where the referees are allegedly getting autographs, now we find out that it's just Mike Evans trying to get golf lessons, but still, like, that's not a good look.
What?
And then on top of
Terrible
that,
look.
like the lack of just plays in general for the Tampa Bay offense, like they rushed for like 3 yards per carry. The pass game was non-existent. And then Carolina ran the ball down their throats when Christian McCaffrey's chilling out with me here on the West Coast. Like, about that game makes sense. Everything about that game was junk, but somehow it kind of makes total sense when you look at it from a macro level of the 2022 NFL football season. Like, all the narratives that we believe coming into this season have been crushed.
Yeah. There's nothing that's normal about the 2022-2023 NFL season. And it's frustrating for a lot. It's nice for me when I'm rooting for a lot of the underdogs and placing a lot of money line bets on different underdogs from around the league. Jared, 7 weeks in, what was your biggest surprise from week 7 now heading into week 8?
Yeah, I mean that ref stuff with the Evans. So I tweeted
That
it
was
yesterday.
hilarious.
It looked now, first glance, I
Right.
tweeted out it looked like he was getting an autograph. Then we actually hear what it was. I'll be honest, I think that's worse. Because it just shows a total lack of awareness. Like, in what universe does the referee think it's not going to be misconstrued what I'm doing here? Like, it's just a lack of awareness for a guy that's supposed to be upholding the rules and order of the game. But again, that had nothing to do with the outcome of the game. I don't think the game was fixed in any capacity. But it just kind of shows. And again, the referees are supposed to be the ones that have the most awareness of the situation that's happening on the field and in the tunnel. So that was just bizarre. The Green Bay Packers situation is bizarre. Now, to be fair, they were going through some really difficult offensive line shuffling before that game. In fact, we heard afterwards that Aaron Rodgers didn't even know before the game that Bakhtiari wasn't going to play. And they kicked Elgin Jenkins out from tackle to guard, kicked him in from tackle to guard. And they had two, because Bakhtiari didn't play, they had two new tackles in that game against Washington who can get after you a little bit defensively. So that wasn't a surprise that they struggled to move the football again. The Tampa Bay Bucks continue to struggle to move the football. Giselle's witch magic is a real thing. I'm currently interviewing witches here in the Las Vegas area to see if they can't help me with my betting selections and foresight into the future. I'm not even joking. I actually reached out to some witches here in the area. There's a lot of them in the city,
No, you did not.
and they're going to help me. I'm going to do some rituals and some seances. We're going to try to get this thing back on track to get the eye on the prize here. No, but I think Tampa Bay and Green Bay, those two veteran quarterbacks, Brady and Rodgers, really struggling as much as they are is a really big surprise.
God bless. Yeah, the Falcons, the most profitable team against the spread this season. Me on this LBI show and Pickswise Playbook. 6-0 straight up against Jared, the most profitable straight up team when it comes to head-to-head bets. So
the Jaguars,
we're going
undefeated.
Let's move on now to week 8. A lot of key matchups that we need to break down. The first one, let's take it across the pond. Another trip in London between the Broncos and the Jags. Some teams, guys, need a change of scenery. The Broncos quite literally need a change of country. They lost 4 straight games. Last week, they lost 16-9 to the New York Jets. The Jags are also in the same boat, though. They have 4 straight losses. The Giants beat them last week. At the start of the season, I don't think that anyone would have expected the Broncos to be the underdogs to the Jags, but here we are in London. The Broncos defense really the only solid piece that they have right now, Tank. This spread set at under a field goal. Jags laying 2.5 points. After last week's performance against the Giants and them actually putting up better numbers than the Giants did, do they have an opportunity here to maybe take advantage of a Broncos team with, a guy like Russell Wilson who's still kind of struggling with a hamstring injury right now?
I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I believe both of these teams are struggling. But with that being said, I feel like the Jags probably feel a little bit better about themselves. I mean, look, like the Giants are a really good football team right now. I mean, you are what your record states, and so we may have these narratives in our head about what the Giants should have looked like at the season, but that's just not the case. Like they're winning games, they're finding a way to win regardless of the opponent, regardless of which ways they need to be able to do it, whether it's on offense, defense, and special teams. So from that standpoint, Jacksonville still look pretty good. Like Travis Etienne needs to get the ball more. That's why they traded James Robinson to the New York Jets, because this dude is explosive in the run game. They have some weapons in the pass game. If you look at that Jags defense, they're still giving up less than 20 points per game. So even though the Denver Broncos is the better defense in this game, I still feel pretty good about where Jacksonville is. So I feel like the lean would be towards the Jags. Also, given the fact that they play in London a lot more than the Denver Broncos, so they should be more familiar with the schedule and things that are going on. That being said, I really don't know if I would be able to trust betting like either of these teams saying like, oh, Jacksonville's going to win, Denver's going to win. So I'm going to go what I usually do and take the under.
Yeah, I mean, the unders have been hitting at about a 60% rate this season. That's the way to bet this game. Jared, are you confident enough to go back to the well and bet the Jags laying the points this week? They're 6-4 straight up in their last 10 games against Denver.
Yeah, Jags is a favorite. No bueno. I learned my lesson last week. They're a really good football team with a ton of talent that doesn't know how to win yet. And Tank, you know this. Yeah. There's a difference between being a good football team and having talent, and then in the fourth quarter when that adversity hits, having a go-to guy that can get you over the hump. The Jags didn't have that on Sunday. They had a lead late, had some penalties that, an interception in the red zone called back because of a penalty, fumble into the end zone, 4th and 1, QB sneak. Those little inches, those little plays that cause you to be a winning team. Jacksonville just doesn't have it yet. You need to learn how to win. The one thing I will say about Denver, I don't know if you guys heard the story about, 8-hour flight across the pond. Russell Wilson apparently for 4 of the 8 hours was stretching and working out in the aisle of the plane while everyone else was sleeping. I mean, he tries so hard, and I don't know if that's the right approach here. I think he's going to play. I think teasing Denver to 8.5 is probably the best quote unquote value bet you're going to get, because this line did open Denver -6 over the summer, and now it's Jacksonville -2.5, 3. So if you tease the Broncos to 8, you're getting 14 points, -6 to +8, a value on the opening line, which originated over the summer over at our friends, the Superbook. So really tough to back Denver, but I'll be honest. I think teasing the Broncos in some capacity is probably the best way to play this game.
And we take it back across the pond, back to the U.S. of A. Did you see that change in accent there? The Raiders are taking on the Saints. The Raiders laying 1.5. The total set just under 50 at 49.5. But the Raiders got things done against the Texans this past week, coming off of their bye week. The Saints found themselves handed another L. Oh, wrong way. L. There we go. They lost 5 of their last 6 games, but it's tough when you're without your starting quarterback for a majority of the year. They do have the 3rd most offensive touchdowns this year, though, in the NFL. Could they use their offense, Tank, and go up against the Raiders and possibly get a win at home in front of a home crowd? Or are you kind of leaning the Raiders here, laying the points?
Before we get into the football, I mean, just think about this matchup, like Sin City and New Orleans. I mean, those are 2 of my favorite cities. Oh my goodness! If you think about the nightlife and the food, oh my
when you come to
God,
visit, bud.
huh? Man, dog, I need to make it there. We already talked about it. Like I need some casino. I need some table action. I need some hot tub action.
Oh, God.
I need to hit some of these restaurants at the casino. Let me go ahead and get back to the football before we just start talking about just nothing but the nightlife in Vegas and New Orleans. But from a football perspective, between the white lines, man, the Raiders, like Josh Jacobs has been toting that damn rock. Like, isn't where we've come from the Hall of Fame game where social media blew up because it's like, why is Josh Jacobs still in the game? Like, are they going to trade him? Is he going to get demoted? Nah, this dude has been eating, feasting, and he's going to continue to. Like, it's just amazing the transformation that we've seen in that Las Vegas Raiders offense over the past few weeks, and I think it continues here against the Saints. But the one thing that you can look at the Raiders, like, regardless of what they're doing on offense, that defense is going to give up some points. And regardless of what the Saints are going to do on offense, we know they're going to turn the ball over, but they also have some weapons getting in the end zone too. They haven't had Jarvis Landry. They haven't had Michael Thomas. Yet and still, Chris Olave is that dude. Like, he's shown that he's one of the
Hmm.
top wide receivers in college football last year, and obviously one of the top young wide receivers in the NFL today. They still have Alvin Kamara. Like, Jawan Johnson came out of nowhere. I scooped him up on fantasy. He gave me 2 tubs against that great matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. And so, regardless of what happens, it seems like the Saints are able to put themselves in position to score points. We can always roll out Taysom Hill. So I really like the opportunity of both of these offenses going back and forth. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. I believe the stadium's going to be full of drunk folks just ready to go. So this may be one of the most lively atmospheres in the NFL
Yeah.
slate this week, and I'm all for it.
I feel like this game is going to be kind of a shootout. A lot of points scored. The total set at 49.5. The Raiders, Jared, have won 2 of their last 3 games, and they've scored 32 plus points in each of those wins. And then you look at the Saints defense, they're allowing almost 30 points per game. They're second worst in terms of defensive points per game allowed, right behind my Detroit Lions. Could this be an over game, even though the unders are the trends to bet this season?
I mean, eventually, I think we're going to see points. I think those trends eventually will balance out, which means more overs than unders likely, at least in the middle part of the season. And then we'll see if it reverses itself again.
Yeah.
But, Tank nailed it. I did a quick little look up here for the last 3 weeks of Josh Jacobs. And he's first in rushing yards per game, first in touchdowns, third in rushing yards over expectation. I mean, he's arguably over the last 3 weeks during this little spurt for the Raiders, the best running back in the league. Certainly helps that he's in a contract year. Let's not overlook that point. I think in general, you're going to see them continue to rely on him. The offensive line for Vegas is playing better. I think there hasn't been as much explosion with Derek Carr in the passing game as we'd like. Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. Waller's been on like a milk carton. I don't know what's going on with him. He's banged up. Renfro's also been in and out of concussion protocol. But for Darren Waller, only have 16 receptions this year. Again, injuries probably a contributing factor, but that was a guy I would say Devontae Adams comes in. Darren Waller is going to be a big benefit of that because he's going to open up a ton of space in the middle, but it's really been Jacobs. So maybe a different identity than we expected with this Raiders team, a little more reliant on the run, a little less reliant on Derek Carr. I like that balance to me, especially once you get into the meat of your divisional schedule down the stretch of the season. If you were going to tell me the Raiders were a road favorite in New Orleans before the season started, might not have believed you, but the quarterback situation with New Orleans, Jarvis Landry, the offensive line, it's been a little bit bumpy. Now they're coming off the mini bye. We'll see if they get healthy, but tough to really back New Orleans right now after what we saw last Thursday night against Arizona, who I didn't think was really a play-on team, but they certainly showed how good they can be. So maybe a little bit down on the Saints coming into this game.
Yeah, if I were to bet anything in this one, it would be tail and tank on the over. Points. The over is 4-0 in the Raiders' last 4 games, and the over is also 4-0 in the Saints' last 4 games. So it could be 5-0 for both teams now after week 8. Now we have the Cardinals taking on the Vikings. The Vikings laying just over a field goal, 3.5 points. They're currently sitting at 5-1, have the best odds right now to win the NFC North. They're coming off of a bye week. They're going to be well rested. The Cardinals coming off of a great win against the aforementioned Saints that we just talked about. But DeAndre Hopkins made his return back to the NFL after his 6-week suspension. He caught 10 of 14, 103 yards in his first game back. The Cardinals won, but they still gave up 34 points to the Saints and lost to the Seahawks the week before. I feel like they're going to come into this game and really want to prove something. Tank, for you, the Vikings right now, they're basically a lock at this point to win the NFC North. Would you take them laying the points at home?
It's interesting. I feel like Minnesota is one of the better teams in the league. I mean, we weren't quite sure the way that Philly was able to dominate them, but we see what Philadelphia is right now, and the Vikings have only lost that one game. I think that unlike the Baltimore Ravens, like the Vikings are also one of those teams that like to let their opponents stay in it. But the most important thing with them is that somehow, some way, they find a way to win. Not really important early on in the season because it helps you build that momentum and you carry it on through the meat of your season. And then obviously when you're trying to make that playoff push. That being said, I'm kind of uncertain about this game because you're never really sure which Arizona team is going to show up. It's going to be that Arizona team that gets stomped out from the get-go, like the Cardinals against the Chiefs, or is it going to be that team that showed up last week where the defense shows out? You see Kyler using his legs. All of a sudden, we got Nuke the Bomb back in that offensive passing game comes to life, and then Benjamin like going crazy. So, this one is interesting. And we remember the game from last year when the Vikings went out to the desert. And man, then
Yeah.
that was a game. That was an explosive game. I mean, so if we want to use that as a blueprint, I mean, you want to lean on the over in that one. Will we see another game like that? I'm not sure, but I will say that the Minnesota defense gives up 20 points per game. Arizona gives up about 25 points per game. If that Arizona
Mhm.
offense is starting to come to life for Justin Jefferson doing what he normally does, this may be a situation where the point totals have come down based on what we've seen early on in the season. Maybe this is an opportunity to take an over.
Yeah, the Cardinals, like you said, they're 0-4-2 against the spread in the last 6 games against the Vikings. So not a great record at this point if you're betting the Cardinals getting the points here. But Jared, the Vikings, 4-game winning streak and a bye. How well rested will they be coming into this game, and how pumped up will they be playing at home against the Cardinals team who've been kind of vacillating all season?
Yeah, vacillating is a good adjective, I think, to use for Arizona. And it's been volatile. Volatile vacillation. Love the alliteration there, too.
Love that.
34-33. That was the final score last year in the desert. Minnesota missed a field goal at the gun, and that's why Arizona won the game. Didn't cover the spread. Kyler Murray threw for 400. DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore, AJ Green, all score touchdowns. I mean, this was a very fun game last year. Dalvin Cook went on for $130. I mean, just give me a slice of what we saw last year, and we're going to be very entertained in this game. We did see some movement in the market. This line opened over the summer at Vikings -2. So, last week it was 6.5, and then Arizona plays well, and, the line now hovering in the 3-4 range. So, again, that vacillation with Arizona, I think it's more on, increase in Minnesota's power rating a little bit, but really Arizona kind of being all over the map here. Which Arizona team are we going to get? I don't really know.
Yeah.
And that's probably why this game is not a bet for me. I think the Cardinals defense is trending in a positive direction. I think that's something to keep an eye on here. If they can maybe find a little bit of an edge, trying to keep Thielen and Jefferson and Cook. I mean, this is a really good Vikings offense that's off the bye. Arizona's off the mini bye. They played last Thursday, so not a huge edge there. And I think based on the numbers, the Vikings may be slightly overachieving in the market. Like maybe their numbers probably aren't indicative of a 5-1 straight up record. So maybe a little bit regression with them, but they're favored in this game. So tough to really fade it. I think this is a pass for me. I'm fascinated to watch Arizona over the next few weeks, see if anything develops, but didn't see a ton of betting value in this game.
Fun fact for you guys, the Minnesota Vikings are straight up in their last 10 home games against Arizona. So if trends say anything, they've won the last 10 games against the Cardinals at home. I don't know if that continues, but at this point, it looks like maybe it will. What about the Giants taking on the Seahawks? Two powerhouse teams this season that no one necessarily thought would be powerhouse teams this season. The Seahawks laying about a field goal -3, but the Giants are rolling right now. 6-1. They won 4 straight after beating the Jags. Seahawks on the same page. They won 3 of their last 4. The last 2 games, Tank, the defense decided to step up. They held the Cardinals to 9 points. They were able to hold off the Chargers. And I don't know about you, but Kenneth Walker III for Heisman. Let's go. He ran for 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. This guy is that dude for the Seahawks right now. Him and Geno Smith. I mean, these are 2 teams that I love because I love rooting for the underdogs, and they're not necessarily underdogs anymore this season. I can't even choose a side for this one because I'm just excited to watch it. But how would you lean, Tank, after watching the Seahawks defense kind of step up and help Geno Smith out the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, this one's interesting. Yeah, you raised some really great points about the Seahawks. Like K9 has been eating. He's a dog with that ball in his hands. And then Gino, just seeing the passion that he plays with in certain moments in the game. I mean, there are a couple of instances where some things weren't going his way, and then he was able to connect on like a long 3rd and long, and he would look at the sideline or look at other places. He was barking a little bit. I'm like, yo, like Gino has that dog back. Like all players, especially when you go through that adversity that he has early on
Yeah.
and all the way up until this year, like you kind of lose a little bit of that essence, that fire that made you a great player in high school and college and to become a #1 draft pick and all that stuff. And so for him to like find that again and to kind of exude that presence, like, yo, I'm back.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing to watch. So I just needed to say that. But then on top of that, like the 2 interesting stats to me in this game is that the Seattle defense gives up the 4th most points per game in the league. New
Mm-hmm.
York Giants defense gives up the 6th fewest points. And I think the Giants defense, I mean, some of that goes to who they played. I mean, they played teams like the Packers who have struggled, the Bears and things like that. But at the same time, I feel like when you have that confidence, like they play. I mean, that's what they are. That's what the stats tell you. That's what they are. And so I feel like they're a solid defense. And I feel like what I saw from Daniel Jones last week, where you anticipate the Giants coming out and being super run heavy, and then yet he's throwing the ball. Like he's using
Mhm.
Wan'Dale Robinson, he's using Darius Slayton. They're not scared to take advantage of those matchups. Now that being said, like that Seattle secondary has been playing better. Like if you really want to attack them, you want to attack them on the run. And Saquon has been a monster, so they can do that too. So if I want to lean as I talk my way through it, this is tough. Honestly, this is
Yeah.
tough because these are two really good football teams. Like I have in my notes that I would probably want to lean to the Seahawks if I had to pick a side just because they're playing at home. But I mean, how many times can you go against the Giants where in every situation they just find some way to
Find
win?
some way to win.
Just look at last week. So
Mhm.
that being said, let me go back to this total, and it's at 44 and a half. And I think that the Seattle Seahawks can probably score more points than a lot of teams have on the Giants. And I'm not worried about the Giants scoring points on Seattle. So let's take
Mhm.
over 44 and a half.
I like it. The Seahawks offense is averaging 26 points per game right now. So that is a really, really good look. But the Giants, they have won 6 games this season because of 3 reasons. Not because of their offense, but because of Saquon Barkley, their defense, and the coaching schemes of Brian Dable. He's been able to outcoach almost every single coach that he's gone up against. Jared, does it happen here in week 8 against Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks, or do the Seahawks come out victorious at home?
There's a lot of things weighing on my mind here. So the first thing I
Sorry.
have to
I know
do is
this is a tough
remove.
one for you.
No, honestly, it is, but you have to. Timeout.
That look on her face too is amazing.
She is. She is Tank. I swear,
I
she
love
made a
it.
bet last year on Trayvon Diggs to record an interception. It was her best bet of the day, and I pooped all over it, and it
I got it at
won.
like
And
plus 500 or something.
a
Yeah.
year later, Tank. A year later, it's like it's. I still get it. It's like they never forget. When she's basically my work wife. They never forget. They never forget.
And the
So
wife is always right, right? Is
Yeah,
that what they
wife,
say?
happy wife,
and they make sure you never
happy life.
forget.
Yeah, happy wife, happy life. But objectively, let's remove emotion from this equation. Let's just do a simple line analysis game before we even dive into the handicap here. So last week, the Jaguars were -3 at home against the Giants. This week,
Hmm.
the Seahawks are -3 at home against the Giants. Seahawks, Jaguars playing on a neutral. Who's the better team? Who's the favorite there? Your mind probably says Seattle, right? Their quarterback's playing better. That's what the numbers say. Seattle probably would be a slight favorite from what I'm hearing
Hmm.
on a neutral against Jacksonville. So just line analysis based off of last week's opponent. I think we are getting a little bit, a hair of value, maybe a half a point or a point on Seattle at -3. And that's a big half a point if you take it off of that key number. So just out of the gates, take any emotion from last week out of it. I think we see a little bit of value on Seattle. Now let's look at the actual handicap of this game. Well, I think the most important thing, I think there's 2 very important factors to consider in this game. First of all, the Giants were a little bit banged up offensively in that game last week, mostly on the
Yeah.
offensive line. Evan Neal, their fantastic rookie right tackle, probably isn't going to play this week. Left guard, Brent Bredeson, also, quote unquote, week to week with a knee injury. Now, on the flip side, they are activating Nick Gates, who I don't know if you know this story. Last year, he was a starting center. I think he played either guard or center, and he injured his left leg or right leg. I forget which leg, but he broke it. It was snapped in half, and he had to be carted off the field. It was an emotional return. Very gruesome injury. He's returning this week. So a little bit of a, uplifting story on the offensive line, but they
Yeah.
still lose 2 starters, Neal and Bredeson, which is noteworthy. Tank mentioned the Seattle defense. I want to give the Seattle defense some love. The Seattle defense is trending in a very positive direction. Over the last 2 weeks, they're 4th in EPA per play, and that's up from 31st in weeks 1 through 5. And I think the first-year defensive coordinator, Clint Hurt, gets a ton of credit here, starting to push the right buttons. This was a guy that was the defensive line coach for the prior 4 years, took over this year for Ken Norton Jr. And, of course, Seattle's defense has been so bad over the last few years. But, again, the secondary really starting to play well. So they held Justin Herbert to 5.7 yards per attempt last week. That's the second lowest of the year. They're 11th in pass rush win rate. Their corner, Tariq Woolen's grading out really well. The rookie, Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati, starting to improve. I think this Seattle defense is a little underrated. And I think they did a good job over the last couple weeks holding Kyler Murray in the pocket, 9 points for Arizona. They held Justin Herbert, who's a pocket passer, to one of his lowest grades of the year. So they faced two very different styles of quarterbacks the last 2 weeks, Murray and Herbert, and they played very well against both of those guys. So we want to talk about Geno. Unbelievable story. I love what the Seattle offense is doing, but maybe the Seattle defense, a little under the radar here with a first-year defensive coordinator that's starting to get his sea legs underneath him. That could be a hidden difference here, little hidden edge for the Seattle, spread. If you want to bet them, their defense may be playing a little bit better. Listen, I'm going to keep fading the Giants because metrically they're
Giants
not
money line,
as good
baby.
as the record indicates. Lauren's going to keep betting the money line. I'm going to keep fading them. Eventually, the Giants will lose. Listen, they're 5-0 as an underdog this year, not just against the spread. 5-0 straight up as an underdog. That is not sustainable. I'm sorry. It's just not. Eventually, they will lose as a dog. I think it's this week. We'll see. If not, Lauren can dance on my grave again next week, and we'll just do the exact same thing.
Well, the Falcons spread. Well, the Falcons streak eventually broke. So I mean, maybe we're
the market always catches up.
It's coming eventually. It just depends on if. It's not if, but when, and it just depends on when the when is. But so far, the Giants have won me a good amount of money so far on the money line this season.
Are you betting Giants money line this week? You're betting the Giants money line again this week?
Of course I am.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Of course I am.
I just wanted to get you on the record saying that.
Yeah, I'm on the record. But Tank, I actually found a really interesting nugget for you if you like the over. The last 3 times these teams have played, they've combined for over 54 points each game. So I know the Giants receiving room is a little beaten up, but both teams can put up points. And so it's going to be interesting to see. But 54 points is about 10 points over the actual total right now. Something to keep in mind.
If we can see K9 and Saquon sprinting back and forth down the field, that'll get us there.
Yeah. I'm in. I'm here for it.
He's a dark horse for Rookie of the Year right now, especially with Breece Hall out. That's a guy I would take a look at for Rookie of the Year.
Especially with Breece Hall out. And we'll get to that Jets game in a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Packers-Bills, though. Sunday Night Football. The Bills right now laying 10.5 points. At the beginning of the season, this would have been another one that people had circled on their calendars alongside the Bills and the Chiefs game. But the Packers trying to figure out their shit this season. 3-game losing streak. And now they're like, oh, shit, we have the Buffalo Bills that we're staring down right in the face. They lost to the Commanders last week, and the Bills are coming off of a bye. So they're going to be well-rested after coming off of a massive win against the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 6. Josh Allen, not to forget, threw for 329 passing yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. This would be 2 of the best quarterbacks going up against each other at the beginning of the season, but not anymore. Aaron Rodgers is only averaging 228 passing yards per game through 7 weeks, Tank. That is a career low for him. Is there any way that the Packers can come back and go against the Bills, who are coming off of a huge win in Week 6 and coming off of a bye in Week 7, and actually get a win? There's no chance, right?
Hell no. I mean, do I need to continue? I mean, we've been seeing like the Packers with like these huge spreads in their favor like for the past 3 weeks. And we got another big one, but it may finally be right because it's on the other side. And now we have a Bills team that just beat a really good Kansas City Chiefs team. They're coming off a bye, like you said, they're playing the Packers at home. And like we have this situation where we always talk about what the Los Angeles Chargers do, and it's called chargering. Like, can we make packering a thing? Because that's what they've been doing like pretty much this entire season, and that shit has not looked good. And I have a feeling that they're going to do a lot of the same this week against the Buffalo Bills. Like, I really don't see a path for the Packers having any success in this game in any phase of the game. Like, I feel like the Buffalo Bills defense is starting to get healthy. I heard like Tre'Davious White name thrown out. Like, I'm not sure if he's playing, but he's getting close enough to playing where they're talking about him. They already got a bunch of other guys back. And then that offense, like Gabe Davis showed that he was healthy against the Steelers. He played well against the Chiefs, and now you gave that offense a bye week to kind of heal up at the perfect time. Like, honestly, I expect the Buffalo Bills to come out hitting on all cylinders. This has been a revenge tour for them. I don't know if there's any reason for them to try to exact some revenge against the Green Bay Packers, but I think it may just be one of those things where the Green Bay Packers have been known as like one of the more dominant teams in the NFC for a long time. The Bills on a collision course, not only for the playoffs, but to try to finally make it to the Super Bowl and make up for all those
Mm-hmm.
missed field goals. And so I feel like this is the perfect opportunity for them to lay the smackdown on A-Rod and everybody that's wearing green and yellow. And honestly, I'm not a Packers hater, but this year for some reason, maybe Vegas did it to me. Like, I'm here for it. Like, I want to see them get mollywopped in Buffalo this week. Like, I'm gonna have my damn popcorn ready.
I know. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron, is going to want to join some of the Bills fans after the game and crush some tables to get his anxiety and anger out after that one, because that is what is going to happen in Buffalo. Josh Allen, Jared, has thrown for 17 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions this season. He is probably going to be the MVP. Can he cover the 10.5-point spread and lead that offense to beat the Packers here?
I mean, logic says yes. There are some things to consider here, market related, of course. Nerd Jared has to chime in, market first, right? This thing opened Bills -3.5 over the summer over at the Westgate, our friends, our sponsor here on the show, the Superbook. Now it's 11. Even last week it was 8.5, and it moved through that secondary key number of 10, now pushing 10.5, 11 after, the Giant or the Packers just came up flat again in Washington. Aaron Rodgers after the game, or maybe it was Monday, I forget when it was, but it was earlier this week. The quote I have is, quote, "I think guys who are making too many mistakes shouldn't be playing." Are you including yourself in that, analysis of the team? Should we get Jordan Love some reps and first team reps this week, Aaron? So again, the offense does not look promising right now. I heard, I read in the practice reports today, Lazard and Watson both didn't practice or were limited. So we'll see what their receiver group looks like this week.
Yeah.
No Tre'Davious White. He has been ruled out, but the rest of the Bills defense is getting healthy. They were without a ton of pieces in the secondary. Remember that game against the Dolphins? They had like 4 starters out on defense. They're getting a little bit healthier now, and eventually White will return. And I'll be honest right now, they might not need him this week because this Packers offense just looks pedestrian. But that being said, when the lights are brightest, it is intriguing at this little nugget. And I'm probably giving it away, but here's a trivia question. In the history of the NFL, since the merger at least, who are the 2 highest rated passers in prime time? Any guesses, guys?
I'm assuming Aaron
History of
Rodgers
the
and
NFL.
Josh Allen. Oh, history of the
Bingo!
NFL. I thought you meant right now. Oh, really?
Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen. In the history of the NFL, since the 1970 merger, which really, anything before that, it's really hard to gauge anyways. The highest rated passers in prime time, Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers. Now, this is not even my brother's Aaron Rodgers. This is a very different Aaron Rodgers than we've seen in prior years. But when the lights are brightest, that tends to when he performs at his best. So if you want to make a case for the Packers to win this game, Aaron Rodgers plays to that level. The offensive line figures out its inefficiencies. We'll see if Bakhtiari is able to play. Elgton Jenkins, again, kicking in from tackle to guard. What's the tackle situation look like for Green Bay this week? Can they run the ball a little bit? That's been a bugaboo for the Bills defense a little bit. And can Aaron Rodgers make those 5 or 6 throws in the game that you're just like, whoa, and that leads to enough points to backdoor this spread or cover it? I don't think the Packers win the game, but 11 points, pretty big spread. I could definitely see them hanging around.
As Tank would say, it's a lot of points.
Yes, a lot of points.
A lot of points.
But in this situation, I feel like it may be justified. And we talk about Aaron Rodgers playing under the bright lights or being in the bright lights. But I'm also thinking about another situation when Aaron Rodgers in the bright lights, and that was draft day. And that's why I imagine him looking like on the end of the bench in the fourth quarter, just looking like, man, why hasn't anyone chosen me? Like, man, why haven't we gotten in the end zone yet? It may be one of those type of games against those Buffalo Bills this week.
Oh, we'll see see what happens. That is Sunday Night Football this week. That is going to be very exciting. Let's get into some key divisional matchups. Right now we have the Jets taking on the Patriots, the AFC East going head-to-head. The Patriots, the favorites here, 1.5 points. A lot of that probably has to do with Breece Hall being injured, and also Vera Tucker is going to miss the rest of the season with a torn tricep, their O-lineman. So a lot of big pieces for the Jets offense not in anymore, even though they are 5-2 in the season. They won 4 straight. And if they pull off a win, they're probably going to cement themselves on top of the AFC East, right up there with the Bills. They're going up against each other for the first time this season. The Pats coming off of getting embarrassed by the Bears. Mac Jones benched, even though Bill Belichick said he wasn't benched after 3 drives. We'll see what happens with that quarterback situation heading into this week, Tank. But how do you expect this game to play out? Do the Pats come out firing after getting embarrassed by the Bears, or do the Jets find that extra power knowing that they don't have Breece Hall anymore this season?
Like, this is one of those situations where you would expect the Patriots to bounce back. That being said, I mean, I think it's one of those things that I've kind of continued to say throughout the early part of the season is that a lot of times we get stuck on the narratives of what we believe teams should be and don't really actually focus on what teams are. And to
Mm-hmm.
date, like, the New York Jets are the better football team. They're playing a lot better on defense. I believe Sauce got player of the week
Yeah.
after his performance against, I mean, obviously they're going against the Denver Broncos, so there wasn't much to do against that pass game. But yet and still, he still played an amazing game. I understand that the New York Jets offense is going to take a blow. I mean, they've been run heavy. That's why Elijah Moore is trying to get out of that, because they really haven't been throwing the ball that much, and most of that running has been going through Breece Hall. So you hate to see him lost. And what people are also saying is, like, arguably their best or one of their best offensive linemen going down as well. That being
Mm-hmm.
said, like, I feel like even though James Robinson still doesn't have the juice that he had like a year or so ago before that Achilles injury, like, he's looked pretty good. And so to be able to get him and pair him with Michael Carter, who has some explosiveness, we saw him on some pretty big screen plays against the Denver Broncos scooting down the sideline. So I feel like he still adds some juice to that offense. And, my man Zach Wilson has some weapons to throw the ball to on the outside. So I don't believe this is going to be a layup for New England by any stretch. And the Jets have the advantage of playing at home. So that being
Yeah.
said, I mean, we can go all about like who's going to play quarterback for New England and all that. I believe they should be able to run the ball. I believe that defense should bounce back. Will some of the uncertainty around that position cause some issues in the locker room? I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
mean, this is the first time where I've
Yeah.
seen where, and it's maybe not that big of a deal, but usually like everyone's on one message in New England. Like, I was in that locker room
Mm-hmm.
for a cup of coffee, and like usually everyone's on one page. And for like people to be saying like, and I understand like why should the punter and all these other folks not be aware of like what the situation is going to be with the quarterback, but to have Mac Jones, who is like your guy, he's healthy enough to play. The crowd is just like hanging out of the bleachers calling for Bailey Zappi, and then once he goes in, the offense and the defense and the entire team just lights up and they come to life. Like, you can't ignore that stuff, and I'm pretty sure the players also can't ignore that as well. So there's going to be some things that New England needs to figure out this week. And so, with that being
Mm-hmm.
said, like, damn, and the Jets are dogs at home in
Yeah.
a game where you can actually like prove that maybe some things have changed in the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
Man, now that I kind of talked through it, I kind of like some of that. I kind of like
Oh boy.
It is very interesting to note that I know that the Jets are dealing with a lot of injuries on their offensive side, but right now they have the 10th best scoring defense in the league. They've given up a league low 12 points per game over their last 3 games. That could be something going up against a Patriots team where I know Bill Belichick, he usually figures out how to get his team back on track. He's one of the best coaches in the NFL. Will he be able to do that, Jared, against a Jets team? Or do you kind of like the Jets here as an underdog at home?
So if you were going to ask me what is more likely, Bill Belichick bouncing back and figuring things out, or the Jets sustaining a level of success that they have not seen in a long time, I think
yeah.
I think I would lean
Yeah.
to
Well,
Bill
if you say it
Belichick.
that way.
So again,
Shit.
before we talk about the
Yeah.
matchups and anything, remove emotion from the equation. I'm a Jets fan. I've been a Jets fan my whole life. it's hard for me to see them sustaining that level of success. That's just my emotion talking. All right, now let's actually dive into some numbers. Well, the Patriots have owned this series. They've won 12 straight games over the Jets. 32-6 since 2003. And I know a lot of those games are with Tom Brady. Well, the games last year weren't, and they outscored them 79-19 with Mac Jones as the starting quarterback. So it's really hard to put myself in a mindset where the Jets are just going to wake up and play great football against the Patriots, because it hasn't happened in most of our viewers' lifetimes.
Is this the hometown reverse jinx that we're kind of listening to right now? I feel like you're trying to give the little reverse
Probably.
jinx to try to
He
help
does
out your
that a
team.
lot.
But keep going though. Okay.
I do
I see where this is going.
The irony is, my nickname amongst my close Penn State friends is RJ Smith, because I like to do a lot of reverse jinxes. That's actually like my calling card. But here, so styles make fights in this game. The Jets defense has been fantastic this year. Sauce Gardner, here's some numbers for you. Sauce Gardner has the second highest Pro Football Focus grade amongst corners. He's a rookie, people. And the only guy playing better than him is Patrick Surtain, who's arguably the best corner in the league. And again, these numbers for a rookie are ridiculous. Third in reception percentage, meaning 40 times targeted this year. He's only allowed 17 catches. Tank, you know this. That is a silly number, that percentage right there. Only 151 total yards allowed in coverage all year. One touchdown. That was week 2 back in Cleveland. He hasn't allowed a touchdown in 5 weeks. He's a rookie corner, people. So it really has been impressive. But that's on the drop back side of the ball. The Jets' run defense has been gashed this year. They're 29th in rushing success rate allowed. And if you were going to ask me, what do the Patriots want to do in this game? Is it throw the ball down the field and challenge Sauce Gardner? Or is it pound the rock down your throat a million times? It's the latter. So styles make fights. The Jets defense, I think, is not as good of a matchup for this Patriots offense than maybe it appears on paper based on the points allowed per game and some of the other things we dig into. Now let's go into the quarterback room for New England, because Tank made a very good point. The locker room right now, I think, really wants Mac Jones to be the guy. We heard after the game that Nelson Aguilar was surprised that Mac Jones got pulled. That's your receiver saying that there was not as much communication about who was going to be playing and how much. Now, Mac kind of quelched that fire. He said, I knew that this was the plan. I knew it was a quote-unquote good plan. That's what he said after the game, that I wasn't going to play the full game. And I think it's because he's not fully healthy, Tank, and they wanted to kind of ease him back in and didn't want to, run a bunch of snaps on him in his first game back from an ankle injury. I think Mac's the guy. I think we're going to see Mac this week. Bill was kind of playing coy with the reporters again on Wednesday. I think Mac will play better this week too. I mean, he only threw 6 passes.
I will say this though, before we go too far on that, like I will say that a lot of times you'll see that, say for a running back, if you're trying to work him back in, like maybe you don't want to give him so many carries, so maybe he doesn't get his entire volume. But when we're talking about quarterbacks, I really haven't seen a situation where this quarterback is healthy enough to play, yet we're only going to give him like a certain number of snaps. Like that doesn't jive with me.
I agree.
He only played 3 drives.
And from what, now granted, this is only what we're reading. I don't know what's going on inside Bill Belichick's head. But from what I'm seeing in the media reports this week, everything that I'm reading says that Mac Jones wasn't pulled based off of performance. Like it wasn't, you threw an interception. Now the optics of that doesn't make sense because he was pulled directly after throwing that interception. But from what I'm reading, now again, Bill Belichick could be lying to us, wouldn't be the first time. But from what I'm reading, that was the plan all along, was to remove him from the game at a certain point. And he was supposed to re-enter the game, but because of the blowout, quote unquote, got out of hand is what I'm hearing this week.
But this is also how it works too.
Right,
like it may not have. Yeah, but it probably wasn't. He wasn't pulled because of the interception. But look at it this way. All right, so Bailey Zappi has been the quarterback. That offense has been on fire since he's been the quarterback. Mac Jones has like these first 3 drives, the last one ended in an interception. So it may not have been that he was pulled on an interception, but the simple fact that the Patriots were favored heavily in this game to pretty much dominate the Chicago Bears. They couldn't do anything on offense. On the flip side, Justin Fields and that Chicago Bears offense was doing work surprisingly against the New England
Mm-hmm.
defense. So Bill was like, yo, before this game gets out of hand, we need to try to insert some juice into this team, into this offense. And so
Sure.
it may not have been
Mm-hmm.
because of the interception, but I think everything, looking at it from a macro level, like he was pulled for bad play. And because the offense
Yeah.
wasn't really working.
Looking at a
It'll be
macro
fascinating to see what the
level.
quarterback situation does this league. I'll add to the point of Vera Tucker, the right tackle who kicked out from guard, their first round pick from last year. That, as much as Brees Hall is a big loss, that is huge. He was playing
Mm-hmm.
very well. And again, when you move a right guard out to tackle and he handles it, and he was, again, you had Dwayne Brown on the other side, the guy they signed in the offseason to replace the injured Mekhi Becton. You had two bookend tackles playing very well. Now you take one of those guys out. How does New England attack that? I don't see this going well for Zach Wilson. I just don't. I think it's going to be a bounce back for this New England defense. Now, again, the Patriots offense might be so bad that they might stay in this game,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see Zach Wilson and the Jets offense having a ton of success. Tough week to play the Patriots, 6 days after they get absolutely blown out by a relatively bad Bears offense.
And
New
before we
England
move on,
is.
like I would
Oh
just
yeah,
say is
keep going,
that
Tank.
I don't want to I don't really want to take anything on this game. Actually, like, a lot of times you'll pass on the game just because it's just kind of and you don't know, like, that's how I
Mm-hmm.
feel about this. And there's things that I would like to happen, but I don't feel confident in the over under on who's going to actually win this game. So if I had to say anything from my side, it'd just be a pass. But I am intrigued by the matchup.
Yeah, it is going to be a fun one to see who starts under center for the Patriots. Is it going to be Mac? Is it going to be good old Bailey Zappy time, Zappy hour? The New England Patriots are 10-0 straight up in the last 10 games against the Jets. We'll see if that continues, to Jared's point. The Panthers taking on the Falcons. NFC South division battle. The Falcons, the favorites here, laying 4.5 points. Even after trading away Christian McCaffrey, they were still able to upset the Bucs. Only held them to 3 total points, which was crazy that the Panthers were able to do that. And the Falcons lost one after winning 3 straight. Really, really disappointed in their offense. Only 214 total yards of offense in that one. But they have won 7. The Falcons have won 7 of their last 9 games against the Panthers. Carolina, though, has won 2 games. The last 2 games at Mercedes-Benz Tank. Do you think that the Panthers can ride that momentum of shutting down Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Or do you think this is a letdown spot for them against the Falcons, who are playing on home turf?
Like, this game could be fun because
Mm-hmm.
we saw Joe Burrow just kind of like turn it back into the guy that he was against the New Orleans Saints. And now after playing the Atlanta Falcons at home, like, he's completed the transition. Like, now he's back to being Joe Burr. Because my man was ice cold with it against the Atlanta Falcons. Like, some of those dimes that he threw to Boyd
Yeah.
and to Jamar Chase, like, my man on fire. Like, that offense, at least the passing game, they still need to get the running game together. But, man, that passing game was clicking on all cylinders. And so looking at the way that P.J. Walker was able to complete passes against what I still feel is like at least an okay Tampa defense, and now you go against the Atlanta defense that's just been getting gashed in the past game. Like, can he do the same thing against them? Like, yeah, I would expect so. And when you look in Atlanta, like, they want to be run heavy, like sometimes to a fault. Like, they're down 21-0, and then Arthur Smith has just been like
Don't
stubborn
even
and
get me
just
started
continuing to
on
run
that.
the rock. And the thing is that maybe he remembers that game. I think it was last year where the Seattle Seahawks jumped out on the Tennessee Titans, and then the Titans were like, yo, our bread and butter is a Derrick Henry, and then they ran the ball down Seattle's throat, and that was their comeback offense, and actually came back and won that game. But Atlanta, you are the Tennessee Titans. You do not have Derrick Henry. You got something that's almost as explosive when Cordero Patterson is healthy, but he's not back until next week at the earliest. And so, with that being said, this game still has the makings of maybe being a sneaky shootout, given that Carolina was able to throw some points up on Tampa Bay, and that Atlanta can score some points in spurts, whether it's Mariota using his legs. They actually try to give Kyle Pitts the ball a little bit. Still not enough times to Drake London either. But yeah, I feel like Falcons at home. Maybe this is a situation where with the over
Yeah.
under is 41.5, maybe we can sneak over that if both of these teams can really put some things together on offense. But this game is one of those ones where there's like such a wide range of outcomes that I wouldn't feel comfortable betting anything really because you really never know what you're going to get out of, especially any of these offenses.
Yeah, I look at the Panthers, and I know they're coming off of that massive game. It's a lot of momentum. I feel like that was an outlier for them, Jared. I don't know if you agree with me that this is kind of a letdown spot for them because in the 3 games before they played Tampa Bay, they averaged 13.7 points per game, and that was with Christian McCaffrey. I just feel like the Falcons are going to come out on top here. They won against the 49ers, they won against the Browns, both who have more talent than Carolina at this point. But how do you feel about the Falcons laying 4.5 here?
Yeah, I wouldn't lay it with the Falcons. I think it's really hard, like let down for a team that's 2-5. Like you're already let down. Like you're 2-5, and also their 2 wins are both against divisional opponents. They're 2-0 in the division this year. Carolina, they beat the Saints, beat the Bucks, so playing pretty well in the NFC South. And it's hard to say that PJ Walker is going to look worse this week against the defense. Listen, if you take out garbage time, which is, 90% win probability on either side, the Falcons have the worst defense in the league, success rate against both the run and the pass. Again, remove garbage time from the equation. The Falcons are 32nd in success rate against the run and the pass on defense. They ain't doing anything well on defense. So I could absolutely see Carolina having more success in this game. You take CMC off the table, you get a little bit of value. The total ticks down a half a point by a point. Didn't really see a huge difference. Chuba Hubbard looked fantastic. I mean, this was a guy, I forget the numbers, but at Oklahoma State, he led the country in rushing. I mean, he is a very prolific running back throughout his college career and clearly has the skills to at least compete at the NFL level. The one thing I will say for Carolina, I watched a cut up of Derek Brown yesterday, Tank's best highlights against the run this year. Derek Brown is balling in the middle for that Carolina defense, and the Panthers defense is a top 5 unit EPA per rush. So if you want to talk about, again, styles make fights, this Carolina defense maybe in the back end with J.C. Horn hurt, Jeremy Chin on IR can be had. Well, the Falcons don't throw the ball. They were down in the game last week, and Mariota only had 13 passing attempts. They want to establish the run, and Derek Brown and that Carolina defense is playing pretty well against the run. So I'm kind of talking myself into taking the points with Carolina. To me, that's the only way I would play this game.
Well, to that point, the underdog 4-0 against the spread in the last 4 meetings. The road team is also 4-0 against the spread in the last 4 meetings. So both of those trends favoring the Panthers in that spot. What about the Titans going up against the Texans? The Titans land just under a field goal at 2.5. AFC South rivals, Tennessee, their second divisional matchup in a row. They came off a big win against the Colts last week. The Texans couldn't stop anything or anyone when they lost to the Raiders. Davis Mills at 302 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. The Titans right now, though, leading the charge in the AFC South race. Tank, I know there's not really value to bet them to win the AFC South at this point, but do you think the Titans come out on top of this one and take a step forward in the division to finish at the top?
I think the Titans come out on top. I wouldn't be surprised if it's close, though. I mean, the Texans have been one of those teams that, regardless of who they play, they're somehow, some way able to stay in it for the most part, like almost through, at least 3/4 of the game, and then the team may pull away at the end or something like that. That being said, I mean, the Texans are the worst at what the Titans are really good at, and that's stopping the run, and the Titans can run the ball down your throat. Like, it's amazing to me. Like, I remember early in the season saying that I didn't really feel that the Titans would be able to have success running the ball because there was no threat, no one that scared you on the outside. So then teams would just go ahead and pack the box and just take away Derrick Henry and say, okay, Ryan Tannehill beat me. And they still really haven't thrown the ball a lot, but Derrick Henry is still that dude. And so I would expect the Titans to continue to lean heavy on that guy, and I really don't see a way for the Houston Texans to stop the run. And so I really don't need to go any further than that. I think that with it being so close, I mean, I think it could be a close game through 3/4 or so. The Titans should be able to cover that. Where are they at, -2? Like, the Titans should be able to cover that. I believe they're by far, I believe, the best, most consistent team in the AFC South, and that's why I feel that anyone who will feel comfortable placing a bet on them covering that should, even though they're on the road in Houston.
Yeah, Derrick Henry's looking at the stat sheet this season for Houston and their run defense. They're allowing almost 165 yards per game on the ground. Derrick Henry's like,
Wow.
I hear that. I see that. I'm coming for it.
Hmm.
He has 673 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns in his last 3 games against the Texans. Jared, can he take advantage of a team like this, and will the Titans cover the spread?
Yeah, I mean, the analytics agree with this. 27th success rate against the run. The Houston Texans this year, over 45% of runs are graded successful against this Texans defense. And the numbers for Henry, I mean, I know you're going to get into it a little bit, LJ, but they're
Yeah.
they're unbelievable in
Gross.
this matchup.
It's gross.
And last week, Josh Jacobs, mirrored that kind of production. And I would, as much as Josh Jacobs is in a contract year and doing all these great things, I still would put Derrick Henry ahead of Josh Jacobs in terms of talent at the running back position, explosiveness, the ability to break tackles, et cetera, et cetera. Not a huge edge, but I definitely think it's a positive matchup for Derrick Henry. The question here, of course, Ryan Tannehill, a little banged up this week, limited in practice. We'll see how that situation develops throughout the week. And in general, this Tennessee offense hasn't been as explosive as you would like, despite having literally the cheat code in the backfield. They haven't scored more than 24 points in a game all season. You would think against Houston they can get to that plateau, but they've won 4 straight games, and they look great. I think they've got the best coach in the division. Maybe not X's and O's, but getting his team ready to play. Mike Vrabel, second to none.
Yep.
I mean, he just gets
situational
dudes
football
ready to go. Yeah,
Yep.
like the X's and O's, maybe sometimes he struggles with, but again, emotional and in-game kind of feel, I think he is as good as it gets.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't say the same thing about, the Texans head coach, Lovie Smith, who's kind of struggled in that regard. So I think this is a game where the Titans absolutely should cover. I can't come up with any logical reasons to back the Texans other than the line's just looking a little short for my liking. I would have expected this one to be a 3. And I'm curious why it's not.
I'll get more into this one in my best bet of the day, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. 2 more games to talk about before we get into our teasers and our best bets. 49ers taking on the Rams. The 49ers laying 1.5. The total set 42.5. The 49ers coming off of a big loss to the Chiefs. Now they're going up against the NFC West foe and the Rams, who are coming off of a bye week, and they beat the Panthers in their last game back in week 6, which the Bucs couldn't do this past week. These 2 teams played in week 4. The 49ers came out on top. I'm kind of leaning towards that again now with McCaffrey having another week at practice with the team. Tank, how do you think that Christian McCaffrey fits into the 49ers? And do they take advantage of the Rams here? It's basically a pick'em game, but Matt Stafford, I just can't trust him with his 8 interceptions so far on the season.
Very true. Like you said, the Rams are coming off a bye. The 49ers are coming off a beatdown, but they played a really good team in the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the better teams in the league. I mean, we saw that they were right there with the Buffalo Bills, who everyone's probably choosing as the best team in the NFL right now. That being said, like the 49ers have gotten healthier. They had Trent Williams actually playing last week. They have Nick Bosa playing last week. Those guys are going to be a week healthier. Now they also have Christian McCaffrey. They're going to have him for a full week. Like McCaffrey, Stanford guy, he's a really smart guy. I believe he's going to be able to play more snaps, not only like uh, game plays and stuff like that. They'll probably have him out there more so in first, second, and third down versus like some red zone packages, some third down. I think he didn't play really that much on third down. I believe that's what it was last week. So he'll be in on some third down situations, probably some 2-minute things like that. So more integrated into the game plan. And so that being said, the 49ers are still looking like that team that dominated the Rams to me. And even though the Rams are coming off a bye, I believe they're still broken. I mean, we need to see how the injury report comes out, but that offensive line may still be a mess. I'm not sure if a bye week is going to fix Matthew Stafford throwing the ball to the wrong team. I think Van Jefferson is working his way back. I'm not sure if he's going to be back this week, but if they have another weapon on the outside, that could potentially help the passing game. They still need to figure out the situation with the running back with Cam Akers. Not sure if he's going to get traded or anything like that. I mean, their running backs that they have on the roster are still good, and they should still be able to kind of handle the load. I'm not worried about what the running game will look like without Cam Akers, and I don't think that his situation would impact the locker room too much. That defense still has Jalen Ramsey, still has Aaron Donald. Yet at the same time, those guys have looked good in spurts, but at the same time, that defense as a whole just hasn't looked like the dominant defense that
Mhm.
we're accustomed to seeing. So you just kind of talk through all these different scenarios, what the Niners have, what they're getting back, where they are right now, what the Rams have, what they're looking like coming out of the bye. I still feel better about the San Francisco 49ers just clearly being the better team than the Los Angeles
Yeah.
Rams. So from that standpoint, um, you get the Niners at what, -1.5? Is it still
Hmm.
there?
Yeah, basically almost a
Yeah.
pick 'em. Almost it's getting pushed down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so I think this is one of those situations. Like, I'm not an expert like Jared, but I will say like this is probably one of those games where maybe you just want to tease it. And if you tease this one and you feel clearly that the San Francisco 49ers are clearly the better team, that may be the way to go on that. But I'll let Jared speak more to that.
Yeah, Jared, is this a good teaser spot for the 49ers?
Well, you don't want to tease through zero. So if the line does flip back and the Niners are an underdog, yes, it would be. The teasing through zero, it's kind of a dead number, and you're paying for the teaser, so it's kind of like paying for a dozen donuts and only getting 11 in the box. So it doesn't really make sense to tease it. I would probably just bet the Niners in that case. And it makes sense. Again, this line did flip from over the summer. The Rams were a 3.5-point favorite when Superbook opened this line in June-ish. Even last week, before the injury report came out for San Francisco, the Rams were still a 2.5-point favorite on the look-ahead line. Well, what happened since? The Niners got their butts kicked. The Rams sat around and did nothing, yet the line moved towards San Francisco. So the sharp money definitely pushing San Francisco back. And again, I think those injury reports being in a positive, direction for San Francisco is why this line really flipped. Not a huge win probability difference when you go from Rams -2.5 to Niners -1.5. Again, you're only really moving over two very small numbers. You have to win by one, so that doesn't change anything. So you're going from 1.5 to 2, basically. It's not a huge move, but it is noteworthy that the Niners did get the line flip despite losing the game. And I do think this San Francisco offense, it's hard to gauge them now because you put CMC in the mix. There's going to be more variance. The priors don't really matter as much, how much they ran. And Pat, we'll see how much it changes. Jimmy G's numbers have been okay this year. Nothing to write home about. They've been okay. Trent Williams got through the game okay. Played on all 78 snaps, graded out well. That's a positive. On the defensive side, Nick Bosa played about 2/3 of the snaps on Sunday. That game got out of hand late, so you don't want to look too much into that. But graded out okay. Week healthier for San Francisco. That is a huge positive. I think the Rams are a lot healthier in this matchup, and that is going to be important on the offensive line. So they're still banged up on the offensive line, but the last time these two teams played a few weeks ago, they were using a third-string center. That's not good. To be fair, though, Joe Noteboom, their star left tackle, did play in that game. He is now on IR. That's not good. Van Jefferson activated from IR on Monday. As Tank knows, you have to go through the protocols and practice. We'll see if he can play this week. But it was good news that he was activated from IR. They designated that window for him to return. So positives, I think, for the Rams injury report. Positives for the Niners injury report. I think the Rams win this. I think the Niners win this game. I do think they're the better team. I think they're playing better right now. And I don't trust Matthew Stafford, frankly. If you're going to ask me which quarterback I trust more in the current moment, Matthew Stafford or Jimmy Garoppolo, I think I trust Jimmy G a little bit more. And I think I like Jimmy G with Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. It's crazy to say that because Stafford just won the Super Bowl. But I trust Jimmy G a little more in this offense right now than I trust Stafford. So not a huge bet for me, but I think I'll get to the window on the Niners this week in some capacity, maybe in the futures market. That's really the better bet this week. The Niners are still plus money to win the NFC West. If they win this week, I know Seattle's in first place, Arizona, these are the two teams that are really going to compete for that division at the end of the day. If the Niners win this week, they'll have a tiebreaker and, of course, a game up in the standings. I think the Niners do win this game. That's how I would play it. I'd go bet the Niners to win the NFC West this week in anticipation that they win this game on Sunday.
Hmm.
The 49ers also have their number 8-1 in the last 9 games between these two. So also something to keep in mind. Last but not least, guys, Monday Night Football. Let's go quickly through it. Browns taking on the Bengals. Bengals laying 3 points here. They got swept by the Browns last season. They want some revenge. AFC North is getting really exciting with the Bengals, the Ravens kind of creating some separation here. Joe Burrow finally finding his rhythm. 501 total yards, 4 touchdowns last week after a bad week 1. He's been pretty solid, Tank. Do you think he can continue that against a Browns team that have a below average pass defense? It could be a spot where he could take advantage.
Yeah, the Cleveland defense gives up the fifth most points per game. And that Cincinnati Bengals offense has come to life the past couple of weeks, and I will only expect that trend to continue. They always say, don't go against the trend. And the way that Joe Burrow is feeling right now with Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd's balling out, and actually T. Higgins, like this offense kind of reminds me of the Buffalo Bills. Like everyone was wondering what happened to Gabe Davis, and he had that ankle injury, and it took him a couple of weeks where he was just basically out there running wind sprints, being a decoy. And then he got some full practices in, and then he exploded against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought that game was going to be similar for T. Higgins this week. I mean, this past week against the Atlanta Falcons, where it's just an amazing matchup. He started to get some full practices in, so I thought that was going to be his exploding game. Ended up being Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd, but I wouldn't be surprised if T. Higgins breaks out again this week. But regardless of whether it's T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, or Tyler Boyd, I feel like that Cincinnati Bengals offense is going to be hard to stop. And so when you say, oh, Cincinnati -3 at home on Monday Night Football, where they're trying to prove that they're still that team to beat in the AFC, I think they go out and they get business done. Because, like, after looking at the Monday night game with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins, the one thing that disappointed me,
Mm-hmm.
like, sometimes you have to win ugly games. But if you want to show that you're like that team or one of those teams in the conference, sometimes you need to be able to step on somebody's throat and be like, hey, yo, I'm that dude. And like the Miami Dolphins didn't do that. I feel like with the attitude and the swag that Joe Burrow carries himself with, that defense is playing better ball as of late. I believe the Cincinnati Bengals try to come out here and make a statement game against their division rival in the Cleveland Browns, and I believe they get it done.
Yeah, the Bengals finally putting 4 full quarters together. I mean, it was really great to see basically how many weeks into the season, 7 weeks into the season, him finally starting to
Even
look
though
like the
they
Joe
did let
Burrow of old.
Atlanta hang around longer than they should have, though. Like Atlanta completing
Mm-hmm.
that huge big play to Demir Bird and then kicking the field goal to make it like 28-17. Like, that's not a good look for that Cincinnati Bengals defense, though. I will say that.
Yeah, no, not at all. Do you think the Browns could take advantage then, Jared, of the Cincinnati Bengals defense, or the Bengals cement themselves in prime time?
I really like the direction this Bengals team's going. I even wore my Bengals shirt today on the show. Look at that guy. Look at that dude. He's ready to go, man. He's roaring and ready to go. So the issue that I have with just running to the window to bet Cincinnati in this game is that it's a primetime game. Everyone is going to be on the Bengals. So I don't see a ton of betting value with the 3 and the hook. You know, the betting value is going to be on Cleveland. But then in my head, I try to walk through the scenarios where Cleveland wins this game or even covers the 3.5. And I don't see a ton of scenarios. I really like the direction the Cincinnati's offense is going in.
Yeah.
52 of the 54 snaps on Sunday against the Falcons were in shotgun. And that is kind of Zach Taylor finally waving the white flag with his stupid, under center offense and saying, okay, Joe, we're going to play to your strengths now. By the way, the 2 snaps that weren't in shotgun were a QB kneel and I think it was a sneak. So again, every meaningful play in the game was played in shotgun for Joe Burrow. That is where he's most comfortable. That's where his numbers have been better throughout the course of his career. But Zach Taylor, stubborn Zach Taylor, kept putting him under center for not only this season, but last season too. Last year, we finally started to see the shotgun become a thing in the second half of the year, and we saw how it ended up. All of the priors we had on the Bengals were wrong, and they made a huge run to the Super Bowl, and maybe some say should have won that game. Now this year, the appendectomy, a lot of issues defensively, injuries early on in the year. We weren't seeing the same Cincinnati team. Now we're starting to see Cincinnati become a force. I'll tell you, this defense playing really well up front. Hendrickson and Hubbard are beasts. This is a really, really good. I think they're the best team in the division, frankly, but we'll see how that shakes out with Baltimore. This is a tough game to bet Cleveland, but the books are going to need Cleveland. Everyone's going to bet the Bengals here. And I understand why.
Mm-hmm.
They've looked really good on both sides of the ball. It's hard to really argue people running to the window to lay it with Cincinnati this week.
Yeah, we'll see how that game plays out Monday Night Football to put a bow on Week 8. Speaking of putting a bow on the show, we have teaser time and then our best bets. Jared, what teaser do you like heading into Week 8?
I haven't locked in a teaser yet. I might have one in my column. I will tell you, Denver from 2.5 to 8.5 intrigues me a lot. And I'll be honest, I think the Rams from 1.5 to 7.5 might be interesting. And I know that, goes against the fact that I think San Francisco might win the game. But I think the Rams are live, and I think they're getting healthier. And I think that's just it meets the criteria. It's a low total game. It's a tight division matchup. You would expect both teams to know each other. The divisional games, as we've said, trending under, meaning points are more valuable. So I think that's a decent spot. But again, I haven't bet a teaser this week. When I do, clearly the Pickswise audience will be the first to know. Denver, though, from 2.5 to 8.5 should be at the top of your teaser card, I think, this week, though.
Yeah, Pickswise Playbook presented by Superbook Sports. Make sure to download the Superbook app or visit superbook.com right now, and they're going to match your first bet up to $1,000. Plus, we are rooting for safeties. If you place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or total at Superbook, and there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, you get a $50 bonus. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions and to sign up for the #1 voted sportsbook in Vegas. Now available in the palm of your hand. Superbook Sports. Make sure to check it out. The absolute best. All right, let's put a bow on our show, as that rhymes. Tank, I'll head to you first. Your best bet heading into Week 8.
Well, when you have an 8-month-old that likes to drool on your head and slap you on the head on every occasion, like obviously you're going to be drawn to a game that involves Las Vegas and New Orleans for all the reasons that we talked about earlier in the show. And so, hey, I'm going right back to that one, and I'm going with this. Like, look, the New Orleans Saints and their opponents have gone over the 49.5 number in 5 of 7 games. The Las Vegas Raiders and whoever they played have gone over that 49.5 number in 4 of their 6 games. Like, the New Orleans defense gives up the second most points per game in the league, and the Las Vegas Raiders defense gives up the 7th most points per game in the league. I think there are going to be a lot of points scored in this game. I believe everybody that steps foot into the Superdome is going to be drunk out of their mind, and I can't wait to watch all of it. So make sure you get a cocktail in your hand as well and bang that
Let's
over
go.
because it's going to hit.
I absolutely love it. I have a cocktail and I'm watching that over. You love to see it. Jared, how about you? Your best bet for Week 8?
Come on, Lauren. You'll have 2 cocktails. Don't sell yourself short here.
I do have an off
at
day.
least.
I do have an off day on Sunday.
Over 1.5 Jabara teenies being drank during that game.
I can't promise anything, guys.
It's made with love and Jared's blood, sweat, and tears. Just wringing it right out as we go on.
Gross. Get your best bet out.
Pats minus 1.5. I hate to do it, Jets, but I have to fade my team. I'm great at fading the New York teams, for better or for worse. Listen, the Jets, this is a terrible spot for them. They are without their #1 running back, who has looked like a freaking rock star all year, shoo-in for Offensive Rookie of the Year until unfortunately tore his ACL against the Broncos. And maybe even more importantly, their bookend right tackle, who was a starting guard, first-round draft pick Elijah Vera Tucker, also out this week. It just is not a good spot for the Jets. Styles make fights. The Jets defense has played really well this year in the secondary. Sauce Gardner is one of the best young players in the league, but New England doesn't care. They're not going to isolate anyone in one-on-one matchups down the field. They are going to take what the defense gives them. If that means Sauce is going to defend 1/3, they won't throw to that third. Period. End of story. There isn't any egos on this New England offense, and they want to run the football, which is something the Jets haven't done well. 29th in rushing success rate allowed on defense. I don't really care who plays quarterback for New England. I think it's going to be Mac Jones. I think he's going to play better than he did last week. It's probably a benefit that he's on the road, not hearing the chants for Bailey Zappi. I just think all of the things in this game that might be coin flips towards the Jets really kind of sway towards New England. And then, oh, by the way, Bill Belichick just owns this Jets team. 12 straight wins, 32-6 since 2003. I know most of them were with Tom Brady. I don't care because last year, Mac Jones outscored the Jets 79-19. We'll see if Zach Wilson could handle this pressure defense Matthew Judon on the edge. Again, I just told you, no Elijah Vera Tucker at right tackle. Good news for Matthew Judon in this very blitz zone scheme, very tough to diagnose Patriots defense. So all of the things to me here that would lead to a pick 'em kind of point me in New England's direction. And oh, by the way, it's under a field goal. So I love New England in the spot lane, just 1.5 points.
I'll make
Jay
mine
Smith,
short,
the
sweet, and
boys
to the
know you
point.
well.
Oh, I like it. I'll make mine short, sweet, and to the point, guys. I'm taking the Titans over the Texans. The Titans laying 2.5 points here. AFC South rivals for the Titans. This is their second divisional matchup in 2 straight weeks. They're coming off of a huge win against the Colts. They want to keep that momentum going in terms of winning their 3rd straight division title, and they should be able to against the Texans. Right now, they're 10-1 straight up in their last 11 games against the AFC South, 4-1 in their last 5 against the Texans. And guess what? Houston is horrible against the run, allowing almost 165 yards per game on the ground. Derrick Henry's like, what? Excuse me? I'm coming, baby. I'm coming. He has 673 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns in his last 3 games against the Houston Texans. So give me the Texans laying the give me the Titans laying the points against the Texans in Houston. Lock it up. Lock it in. That's it, guys. Pickswise Playbook Week 8 edition. Best of luck with your bets. Tank Williams, Gerard Smith, Laurent Jabara. I feel like I should say your name better, Tank. Tonk Williams, Gerard Smith, Laurent Jabara.
Tonk.
We'll see you guys
Yeah,
next
and I
week.
guess since it's winter time, that's why I'm looking a little light today. Jared has the melanin, but it's okay. We'll get that point right eventually.
Well, yeah, we'll get it right eventually. It's backwards, guys. We'll figure it out. This was Pickswise Playbook presented by Superbook Sports. We'll see you guys next week.